Okay, so now we want to get back some user data in our API. So we are going to create a URL path for a single user object here. And before we actually get back that data, we are going to have to create another serializer and then serialize that user model. So let's go into our views here. And before we get started, I want to fix the spelling of serializer. So that's supposed to be with an IA, and if you saw me make this mistake in earlier videos, uh, I will try to make a comment in this videos when I actually release that. But hopefully you didn't make this mistake. If not, or if you did, just go ahead and fix these with me. So in our product view and product, and then we actually need to change the spelling of serializer here. So IA, and the import is now spelled that way. Okay, so I'm correcting all the spelling. You also will correct your. So if I save this, we should not have any errors. And let's go ahead and create that user serializer. So in here, we are just going to take this product serializer and I am going to copy and paste that and then use the imported user model in here. And we are going to call this user serializer, and we are then for the actual model we will just use user in here. So in our views now we can use that serializer. We first need to import this, so we are going to specify that, set that to user. And for the view I am just going to copy the products view. Okay, I will copy and paste this, and then I'm going to call this one get user profile. So in here we can use the request dot user object here. So we can do request dot user, and we are going to set this value to user. So I'm going to try to explain this without confusing you. Okay. So normally in Django, when a user is logged in using that default authentication system, you can get the request user object right here, and that's going to give you the authenticated user. Now because we are using the REST API and we are using that token based authentication, so this user is not going to be the logged in user that we normally have in Django. It's going to get the data from the token because of this decorator, and then it's going to give us the user from that token. So hopefully it will make sense as we start using it, but I just wanted to make sure you understand the difference, because if you are just new using Django admin panel and then try to get this user, it's not going to be the same user. So we have our request user, and now what we want to do is actually serialize that user. And I am going to take this. So user serializer is spelled out again, and we can change this product serializer to that user serializer. Okay, and then we need to pass in that user object, and then many is going to be set to false because we are just going to get back a single user. I'm not trying to return back a list, and then we have our serializer data, so that checks out. And I think that's it for the view for now. And let's go into the URL here, and then we'll actually set that path. So I'm just going to copy the products view or the products path, and we are going to call this one. Let's see, I want to call this users and then profile. So this is going to be users forward slash profile, and we are going to use that new view. So get user profile, and for the actual name of the path, we are going to call this user dash profile. So get user profile, and for the actual name of that, we are updating here. Okay, so in our serializer, I want to fix up one thing here. So I don't want to get back all the information because the user object has a lot of data in there, like password information and so on. So we are just going to get back the ID for now, and then later on we'll actually customize this. So we'll get the ID and then the username. And I also want to get back the email for you. So this will just tell us exactly what fields we want to return rather than just getting everything. Okay, and I want to be able to explain what's going on with this request user. So actually have the perfect example right now. So if we go to our API, and I am just going to open up port 8000, and we have to do forward slash API, then users, and then this is going to be profile. So right now we get back nothing in our response here. So we can't find a user. So request dot user cannot find a logged in user. Okay, well technically we are logged in. So if I go to port 8000, then in my admin panel I am logged in as a Dennis right now, but we are still not getting back that user information, and that's because we are wrapping in it in this decorator right now, and we are looking for a token to get that user rather than that default authentication system. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. So to actually get this user, we are going to need to send a token, and then you will actually see that decoding processes. So in Postman, what I am going to do, and this is why we need Postman for something like this, uh, I am going to create a new request here, and this is going to be a GET request, and we are going to go to API forward slash users, and then this is going to get the user data. So user profile, and we will save this. Okay, and I need to make sure that I am in this ProSoft to get that environment variable. So we are going to use the double curly braces, and then URL is going to be in all caps, and we are going to customize this. So this is going to be users and then profile, and let's try this again. So we are going to send the get request, and we get back nothing right now. So in our headers right here, so we can use authorization, but I am just going to throw that into what we called headers. So that's just a more custom way of doing that. Let's just set this to authorization, and then later on we'll actually send this in our API calls. So this will be beer. I can spell that right. I think it's better like that, bearer. And then let's get the user information. So I'm going to change this to login, and we want to generate a token right now. So I'm going to log in as Dennis, and then I'm going to get the access token here. Okay. So we'll copy this, and then in Postman, I'm just going to paste this as the value. So we are going to leave a space, and then I think that's how you're going to spell this. So let's go ahead and send that request, and let me see what's going on here. So give me 1 second. So this just needs to be capitalized. I paused it for a second to look up that. I thought something looked weird there. So now in our response, we get back a user. So what happened here is we sent this token, this authorization token, then Django, because of the the way we customize things with our JSON web token, and because we in settings.py configured the authentication. So the authentication class to use the JSON web token. So right here, because we configured all of this, when we send that, this view gets that token, and Now we have access to request.user based on what's inside of that token. So I hope that makes a little bit more sense. So we are sending this information, and I can remove this token. If I send it now, we would not get back the data, but if I trigger this again, we'll get back this user information. Okay, so if I go back here and then log in as my other user, get back a new token, so we will be able to get back different user information depending on the token that was sent. So let's go ahead and save these settings right here. So we'll save the authorization and then the actual route. And what I want to do here is customize this response for that user field. So I want more data than this. And then I also want to customize the fields, and I will explain why in a second. So if we look up the Django user model, so let's look up the default Django user model, and in the documentation here, we can see fields like username, first name, last name, email, and then staff active, and super is super user, and then a few more to go with that. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to make a field just called name. So I don't want to first and last name. I just want one field to store the username. Now we could do this by customizing the user model, but that's a lot of work where we start updating the actual database. And for something as simple as this, I just want to store the full name inside a first name, and then just return a response for the actual name. So for this, what we can do is we can create serializer method fields, and then we can return back custom attributes. So because this is a class, what we could do is create a method here. So we'll create a function here. So we'll just and then to actually create the method here, we first need to specify get and then the field name. So we are just going to call this name, and get is not going to be in the name. That's just how Django tells us to do this. So the actual field name is going to be name right here. And in here, we are going to pass in self, which is going to be the serializer. And then we want to pass in the object. So object is going to be the user object. And then for return, we just want to return back name here. So let's just do name, and let's go ahead and specify this variable. So by default, we want the username to be the object, so the user, and then we just want to pass in uh, all the parameters or all the user values into first name. So that's the user field. But what we want to do is we want to check if the user even has a name. There's times when the user may not submit a name, or sometimes might happen to that for all users. And if we don't have a name, we just want to return back a user email, because a user does need an email. That is going to be a required field. So we'll just create a condition, and we'll say if the name is equal to an empty string, then let's go ahead and set name to the user email. So we'll do name equals object dot email. And to actually use this, we need to let the user serializer here know about this. So we have the method, and in here we are going to specify the attribute name. So that's going to be name, and we are just going to say serializers dot serializer method field. And in method field, we are going to set this to read underscore only, and this is going to be true. So this is going to be a read only field. And now that we have our serializer method and then the actual method right here, what we can do is we can take this name and pass it in as a field that we want to render. So if I say this, let's go back into Postman. So you could update the database and that user model, but I'm going to keep things simpler. So we are getting back the email right now, and that is because we don't have the username here. Okay. So if I go back in here, and for Dennis, here we have the username for first name. Let's just set this to Dennis, and it looks like I added a forward slash there. Actually, no, that was correct. And if I go back to Postman, now we get back the username. Okay, so there is a few more attributes that I need to add here. So in the front end, so you notice that we were using underscore id instead of just id. So in the database, I created all the other models to use underscores id, and just to keep that same convention, I'm going to do this for the user model. So instead of updating the actual model, we just need this in the API. So to keep this consistent, we'll go ahead and update the serializer. So I'm going to create an underscore id field here. So we'll just do the serializer dot method field, and then this is going to be underscore id, and for this value we are just going to return back the object id. So let's go ahead and create the next value. So just above name we'll create another one, and remember this has to be get and then underscore id technically, but because our field is called underscore id, that needs to be a double underscore now. So just make sure you don't get confused there, and then we will pass in self, then the object, and we'll just return back the user id here. So the return value will just be object.id. So we can take the id, and I will just return both. In theory, I could just get rid of id, but there is no issue there. So I will just return back. What's going on here actually? So underscore id, and now we have that. Okay. And then I also want to customize the admin field. So Django, we are going to base this off the staff field, and in the front end, I want to call my field. So my field is admin with a capital A. So we are just going to choose this attribute, and we will create another custom field. So let's go ahead and copy and paste that. And this is going to be is admin. And let's see, we'll throw that in here. Actually, I will create the field here first. So we are also going to copy and paste id now, and then this is going to be get underscore is admin. And for this, all I have to do is return object is staff. So object, and let's see what field was that. That is admin right here. So object is underscore staff. So it's the same value. But I just want to keep that field name as is admin, and we will throw that in here. And now we should get back more fields. So let's see what else do I need. I need the username, the email, and I think that's it for now. Then I will just customize this if we need to get anything else later. So let's go to Postman and let's see. So we get back to user IDs. That's fine. That doesn't change anything. I could just get rid of the first one, our username, which we are not going to use in the front end. And later on, our username will actually be the email. So we'll configure that. We have the name and is admin. So what we want to do next is actually create another user serializer. And this serializer will do the exact same thing that our current serializer does. Except for this time it's going to generate a refresh token. So we are going to need this for situations when we first register, when a user resets their accounts. So we need a new token to represent the new user information. So there is a few situations that will need this in. So I'm just going to create it, and then when we actually start using it, if it doesn't make sense to you right away, it will start making sense and why we need this. So the first thing I need is then import, and I want to import the refresh token function. So from REST underscore framework, simple jwt dot tokens, let's import refresh token. And now to create the new user serializer, let's go down here just under our original, and we'll create the class. And this is going to be user serializer with token. And all we need to do is extend this serializer. So we are going to extend user serializer. We'll pass that in right here, and we are going to have all the same attributes as this serializer plus one. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish this up. So we'll do class meta, and we need to specify the model. So the model is going to be the user and then the fields. So the fields here, this is going to be the same as the fields that we have here. So we can copy this, and we are going to pass in the token value. Okay. So to generate the new token, we'll throw that in right here, and then we will have to create this. So everything is going to be the same except for that token. And I need to create the serializer method field. So I'm just going to copy this, and user serializer with the token. I'm going to call this token, and let's create the method. So down here we will just create get underscore token, and we need to pass in self and object. So obj, and we will return a token right away, and we'll create this one. Okay. So the token actually needs to be a string value when we do return that, and replace it with this return str token. So we'll wrap that, and then let's set the token value. So token is going to be set to refresh token dot for underscore user, and we will pass in obj. So the object of the actual user. So what's happening here is, as we are generating or serializing a user, we are going to take that user object, and we are going to return back another token with the initial response. So in the front end, we are actually going to have two tokens when we first register, and that doesn't change anything. We are going to have a access token and then an actual token value, and it really doesn't matter which one we are using. The tokens will be different, but they are still representing the same data, so there is no need to get rid of this refresh token right here or the access token. we'll just keep two tokens in there. So now that we have that, we have the serializer method field, the actual method, we added it to our fields here in the front end. So the first place we are going to use it, it is actually to clean this up. So I want to return back more data, and instead of doing something like data and then setting the value, we are just going to create a for loop and output the data from our serializer. So that's going to be user serializer with token. And I just wanted to repeat, we technically don't need to use this in here. We could just manually output each item, but because we have the serializer, we might as well make this a little bit more programmatic. So I'm just going to get rid of everything in here, and we are going to set the serializer. So serializer, and this is going to be set to user serializer with data. Okay. So user serializer with token, okay, not data. And then we can just pass in self dot user, and we are going to add in data right away here. So we have the data here, and now we can just loop through this. So we are just going to do for key value. So cave in serializer dot items, and we are just going to loop through all the items inside of our serializer. So all of these fields right here, we just want to output with the initial response when we get back that first token. So we are going to do for cave and items. Data is going to be set to key, and then the value is going to be v, and that just makes it a little bit the cleaner. Instead of having multiple lines here for each item, it's more programmatic. And if I go ahead and hit post here, the new token now generates all that data inside of my serializer. So we have two tokens here. It doesn't matter which one we use, they both hold the same data, but now we have is admin name, email, and all the data from our serializer. So that's all we have for this video. In the next video, we are going to start taking care of protected routes. So we'll be able to restrict certain routes to admin users or users that are logged in. So for example, products doesn't need to be protected. Anyone should be able to see this, but a user profile should be only seen by a user. So we'll set those restrictions on certain routes now.